All right, so are you ready to dive deep?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
We're going to be talking about early American politics.
Ooh, exciting.
Specifically, the rise of political parties
Mm.
and the era of Thomas Jefferson.
Sounds like a good one.
We've got some great sources here to help us out today.
Like what?
So we're going to be pulling from 4.2 PowerPoint notes.
Okay.
Also 4.2, the rise of political parties and the era of Jefferson.pdf.
Right.
And last but not least, we've got AMSCO 4.2.pdf.
I'm ready to go deep.
Our mission today
What is it?
is to understand not just what happened, but why.
Okay.
We want to go beyond the surface and figure out what were the big ideas,
Yeah.
what were the conflicts and the lasting impacts of this era.
Yeah, how did it shape the nation we know today?
You might be surprised at how much these early debates still resonate.
That's true.
The echoes of these early political battles, they're still very much alive today.
Right, things like the tension between federal power and states' rights. The role of the courts. These are all issues we're still grappling with.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is.
So to get started, let's set the scene.
Okay.
It's the late 1700s. America's just won its independence. And the Constitution's brand new.
Yep.
Everybody's trying to figure out how this whole United States experiment is going to work.
Right.
And our sources point out that this led to some pretty fierce disagreements right from the start.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So tell me about that.
Well, you had all these different groups with different visions for the new nation. Like, should America be a powerful, centralized nation like those European powers that they just broke away from?
Oh, interesting.
Or should the emphasis be on individual liberty and states' rights?
Yeah.
These were big fundamental questions.
And that led to?
These questions quickly led to the formation of the first political parties.
Okay.
The Federalists and the Democratic-Republican.
And these weren't just like social clubs, right?
These were serious groups. They were battling it out for control of the government.
Yeah.
Each trying to shape the future of America in their image.
So let's break down these early political parties.
Okay.
We've all heard the names, but it can be tough to remember who stood for what.
Sure.
So can you help us out here? What were the key differences between the Federalists and the Democratic-Republicans?
Well, think of it this way.
Okay.
The Federalists, led by figures like Alexander Hamilton,
Okay.
they believed in a strong central government.
Got it.
And they argued that this was absolutely essential for national unity and economic growth.
Okay. Why was that?
Well, especially because it was such a young nation surrounded by all these powerful European empires.
Right.
So they felt they needed to be strong.
Okay.
So they championed policies like a national bank, tariffs to protect American industries,
Okay.
and a loose interpretation of the Constitution.
A loose interpretation.
Yeah.
Meaning what?
Well, they believed that the government had all these implied powers beyond those explicitly listed in the Constitution.
So this loose interpretation of the Constitution.
Yeah.
That's where the idea of implied powers comes in.
Yeah.
Right? Meaning the government can do things that aren't specifically spelled out in the Constitution,
Yeah,
as long as they're related to its goals.
exactly.
Got it.
The Federalists believe that the Constitution should be interpreted broadly
Okay.
to allow the government to adapt to changing circumstances.
Huh.
You know, all the new challenges that might pop up.
Right, right.
It was about flexibility for them.
So what about the Democratic-Republicans?
Yeah, they took a very different approach.
Okay.
They were led by Thomas Jefferson,
Okay.
and they were much more wary of centralized power.
Okay.
You know, they saw it as a potential threat to individual liberty. They favored a strict interpretation of the Constitution,
Okay.
arguing that the federal government should be limited to only the powers that were specifically granted to it.
All right. So they wanted to keep the federal government limited.
Yes, very much so. Okay.
And of course, they championed the rights of states
Yeah.
to govern themselves without interference from the federal government.
Okay, so we've got the Federalists pushing for a strong national government.
Yeah.
And the Democratic Republicans advocating for states' rights.
Right.
And limited federal power.
Exactly.
And it's fascinating how this tension between federal and state power is a recurring theme in American history, even today.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, think about the debates we have now over healthcare, education, even gun control.
It's still going on.
It's like we're still wrestling with the same fundamental questions about the balance of power in our system.
You've hit on a crucial point.
Yeah.
That tension, it's built into the very structure of your federal system. It's like this constant push and pull, a balancing act that requires compromise and negotiation.
Right, for sure.
And it's worth noting that both sides had valid points.
Yeah.
You know, a strong national government it can provide stability and promote economic growth.
But too much centralization can stifle individual liberty and infringe upon the rights of states.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's about finding that balance.
It's a dilemma.
It is.
But how did these differing visions play out in terms of specific policies?
Well,
were there any particular issues where the Federalists and Democratic-Republicans were really at odds with each other?
Absolutely.
Right.
Economic policy, for example.
Okay.
The Federalists, with their focus on industry and commerce, they really favored tariffs on imported goods.
And why was that?
To protect American manufacturers.
Okay.
They also supported the creation of a national bank.
Oh, right.
To help stabilize the currency and promote investment.
Okay, got it.
The Democratic Republicans, on the other hand, with their base of support among farmers and rural communities, they opposed these policies.
They did?
Yeah. They argued that tariffs actually hurt farmers.
Oh, how so?
Well, they raised the prices of manufactured goods. And that a national bank, they thought, it only benefited wealthy elites.
At the expense of?
At the expense of ordinary citizens.
So in a way, the economic policies of the Federalists were actually setting the stage for future conflict, especially with the South, which relied heavily on agriculture.
Right.
And opposed tariffs.
You're right. That's a very astute observation.
Is it?
Yeah.
I'm trying here.
These early economic debates, they really highlighted the growing sectional differences within the nation. Yeah. Differences that would eventually contribute to the Civil War.
Wow.
Decades later.
It's mind-blowing to think how these early political clashes had such long-lasting consequences. Yeah. It really underscores the importance of understanding this period.
It does. And as we delve deeper into this era, you'll see how these fundamental disagreements about the role of government, the balance of power, and the direction of the nation all played out in everything. From the election of 1800 to the expansion westward.
So let's talk about that election, the election of 1800.
Okay.
Our sources call it the Revolution of 1800. What made it so revolutionary?
Well,
and why should we care?
This election marked a dramatic shift in power. For the first time, the Federalists, who had dominated the government since its inception, they were defeated.
Oh, wow.
By Thomas Jefferson. And the Democratic-Republicans.
So it was a big change.
It was a huge change.
Okay.
But what truly makes this election revolutionary is that it was the first peaceful transfer of power between opposing parties in U.S. history.
That's a big deal, right?
It is.
I mean, this was a time when revolutions were happening all over Europe.
Yeah.
Often turning violent.
Yeah.
But in the U.S., the losing party just accepted the results and peacefully handed over the reins of government.
Yeah.
That sets a powerful precedent for how we conduct our elections today.
It does.
Doesn't it?
The peaceful transition of power is a cornerstone of any democracy. And the election of 1800, it established that principle in the United States.
Yeah.
It showed that even in the heat of these political battles, there was a shared commitment to the Constitution and the democratic process.
For sure.
And that was really important.
It really was. That's pretty amazing to think about, that tradition of peaceful transitions of power.
It is.
Something we often take for granted.
Right.
But let's talk about Thomas Jefferson as president.
Okay.
He was kind of a complex figure, wasn't he?
He was.
This is a guy who championed limited government.
Yeah.
But then he oversaw the Louisiana Purchase. More than double the size of the U.S.
Right.
How do you...
It's interesting.
Yeah. How do we reconcile those two seemingly contradictory positions?
Well, it's a great question.
Yeah.
And it really gets to the heart of Jefferson's character and his presidency.
Yeah.
He was a staunch advocate for limited government. You know, he believed that the federal government should only exercise powers specifically granted to it by the Constitution. But he was also a visionary leader who recognized the strategic importance of the Louisiana Territory.
So what was so special about the Louisiana Territory?
Remind me.
Why was it such a big deal for the U.S. to acquire it?
Well, the Louisiana Territory was this vast expanse of land west of the Mississippi River. And it included the crucial port of New Orleans.
Ooh.
Control of New Orleans meant control of the Mississippi River.
Right.
And that was the lifeline for American trade and commerce at the time.
Got it.
Whoever controlled New Orleans, they could effectively choke off American access to the river.
Oh, wow.
And stifle westward expansion.
So this wasn't just about acquiring more land.
No.
It was about securing
It was strategic.
a vital economic and strategic asset.
Exactly, for the young nation.
Well, wasn't this territory controlled by France?
Yeah.
And didn't Jefferson want to avoid European entanglements?
You're right. He was wary of foreign entanglements.
Yeah.
He believed that the U.S. should focus on developing its own resources and institutions rather than getting bogged down in European affairs.
Yeah.
However, the situation with Louisiana presented a unique dilemma.
A dilemma because controlling the Mississippi River was so vital.
Exactly.
So what did Jefferson do?
Well,
did he try to negotiate with Napoleon?
He did. He sent envoys to France.
Okay.
With instructions to purchase New Orleans.
Okay.
Now, here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Napoleon was facing some financial difficulties and a growing rebellion in Haiti.
Okay.
Which was a valuable French colony at the time.
Okay.
So he decided to offer the U.S. a deal they couldn't refuse.
Let me guess.
What do you think?
He offered to sell them all of Louisiana.
You got it.
Not just New Orleans?
The whole thing.
Oh, wow.
Napoleon offered to sell the entire Louisiana territory to the U.S.
Okay.
For a bargain price of $15 million. It was a staggering offer.
Yeah.
One that would more than double the size of the nation.
But for Jefferson, this created a constitutional crisis.
It did.
Because
he was a strict constructionist.
Right.
And the Constitution didn't exactly say anything about a president having the power to buy huge chunks of land from foreign powers.
Yeah, what did he do?
He wrestled with it.
Yeah.
He knew that this was a chance to secure America's future and fulfill his vision of westward expansion.
Yeah.
But he also believed in adhering to the Constitution.
So what did he do?
Ultimately, he decided that the power to acquire territory was implied in the president's treaty-making power.
Okay.
And the Senate ultimately ratified the purchase.
So he found a way to justify the purchase.
He did.
Without completely abandoning his principles.
Right.
Seems like a pretty pragmatic move.
It was.
Considering the stakes.
And the Louisiana Purchase turned out to be one of the most significant events in American history.
Yeah.
Opened up vast new lands for exploration and settlement, strengthened American control of the Mississippi River, and it removed a European presence from the heart of the continent.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine what the U.S. would look like today without the Louisiana Purchase.
It really is. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
To think about the scale of this acquisition.
It is.
But all that new territory must have presented some challenges as well.
Right.
How do you even begin to explore and govern such a vast and unknown region?
Well, that's where the Lewis and Clark expedition comes in.
Oh, okay.
In 1804, Jefferson commissioned Meriwether Lewis and William Clark to lead an expedition across the newly acquired Louisiana territory.
So their mission?
Their mission was to explore the Missouri River, find a route to the Pacific Ocean, document the plants and animals they encountered, and establish relations with the Native American tribes who lived in the region.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot.
It was a major undertaking. I mean, they didn't have Google Maps or GPS back then.
Right.
They were venturing into the unknown, facing all sorts of dangers and uncertainties.
So what kind of impact did their journey have?
Well, the Lewis and Clark expedition, it was a monumental achievement.
Oh.
They faced incredible hardships.
Okay.
Harsh weather, treacherous terrain, encounters with hostile tribes.
Oh, wow.
The constant threat of starvation.
Yeah.
But they persevered.
Wow.
They collected valuable scientific data.
Okay.
They mapped the vast territory and established contact with dozens of Native American tribes.
Wow.
Their journey helped to solidify American claims to the region and paved the way for future westward expansion.
And speaking of westward expansion, we can't forget the role of Sacagawea.
Right.
The Shoshone woman who served as their guide and interpreter. Our sources mentioned her crucial role in the expedition's success.
She was indispensable to the expedition.
Yeah.
Her knowledge of languages, geography, and Native American customs was invaluable.
Yeah.
She helped Lewis and Clark negotiate with tribes, find food and shelter, and navigate treacherous terrain.
So important.
Even helped to ease tensions with some tribes who were initially hostile to the expedition. Without her contributions, the expedition might have failed.
She sounds like a remarkable woman.
She was.
It's incredible to think about the courage and resilience she displayed on that journey.
Absolutely.
It really challenges the traditional narrative of westward expansion being solely a story of white male explorers.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about another key figure from this era.
All right.
John Marshall,
Okay.
Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
Yep.
He was a Federalist,
Mm-hmm.
appointed by John Adams
Right.
right before Jefferson took office.
Yeah.
And yet he ended up having a profound impact on shaping the power of the federal government,
He did.
even during Jefferson's presidency.
Right.
So how did that happen?
Well, John Marshall was a brilliant legal mind
Okay.
and a shrewd political operator.
Okay.
He understood the importance of a strong federal judiciary, and he used his position as Chief Justice to expand the power of the Supreme Court,
Okay.
often at the expense of states' rights.
Right, which was a core principle of Jefferson's Democratic-Republican Party.
Yes.
So you got Jefferson in the White House
Yep.
advocating for limited government.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Marshall on the Supreme Court
Right.
pushing for a stronger federal role.
Mm.
How did those two conflicting visions play out?
Well, one of the most significant examples of this clash is the landmark case of Marbury v. Madison
Okay.
in 1803.
Okay.
This case established the principle of judicial review, which gives the Supreme Court the power to declare laws unconstitutional.
Wait a minute. So before Marbury v. Madison, the Supreme Court couldn't just strike down laws it didn't like. That seems like a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
How did that concept even come about?
It was a pivotal moment in American legal history, and you're right, it stemmed from a pretty dramatic set of circumstances.
Okay.
The case involved those infamous midnight appointments made by John Adams in the final days of his presidency.
Okay, remind me about those.
Well, Adams, a Federalist,
Right.
knew that he was about to be replaced by Jefferson.
A Democratic-Republican.
Right, a Democratic-Republican. So, in a last-ditch effort to maintain Federalist influence in the government,
Okay.
he rushed through a bunch of judicial appointments,
Oh, I see.
including one for William Marbury as a Justice of the Peace.
So Adams was basically trying to stack the courts with Federalists
Basically.
before Jefferson could take office.
Exactly.
That's some serious political maneuvering.
It was.
What happened to Marbury, though?
Well, Marbury's appointment was approved by the Senate, but his commission, the official document confirming his appointment, hadn't been delivered before Jefferson took office. Jefferson, not surprisingly, ordered his Secretary of State,
James Madison.
yeah, James Madison, not to deliver the commission.
So Marbury was left hanging.
Pretty much.
Wow, so what did he do?
Well, Marbury, feeling cheated,
Yeah.
sued Madison to force him to hand over the document.
So this little
It
dispute,
seemed minor at the time.
this minor dispute over a single judicial appointment ended up before the Supreme Court
It did.
with John Marshall,
Yeah.
a Federalist, presiding over a case involving actions taken by Jefferson's administration.
Yeah.
That must have been tense.
It was a delicate situation, to say the least.
Yep.
And Marshall, in a stroke of legal genius, found a way to both assert the power of the Supreme Court and avoid a direct confrontation with Jefferson.
So what did he do?
He ruled that Marbury did have a right to his commission,
Okay.
but he also ruled that the law that gave Marbury the right to sue in the Supreme Court was itself unconstitutional.
Okay, now I'm confused.
I know, it's a little tricky.
So he sided with Marbury, but then said the law that allowed Marbury to sue was unconstitutional.
Exactly.
How does that even work?
By declaring that law unconstitutional, Marshall established the principle of judicial review.
Oh, okay.
He essentially said that the Supreme Court has the power to review laws passed by Congress
Okay.
and determine whether they are compatible with the Constitution.
So if a law is found to be unconstitutional,
The court can strike it down.
wow, that's a huge power for the court.
It is.
It basically gives them the final say on what the Constitution means.
In a way, yes.
And to think, it all stemmed from this seemingly minor dispute over a Justice of the Peace appointment.
It's pretty remarkable, isn't it?
It really is.
It's the beauty of the American legal system.
Yeah.
Even seemingly small cases can have far-reaching consequences.
And Marbury v. Madison set a precedent
It did.
that has shaped the balance of power in our government for over 2 centuries.
Exactly.
It really highlights the importance of the judiciary and the power of precedent.
It does.
We've talked about the Louisiana Purchase, Lewis and Clark. But Jefferson's presidency wasn't all smooth sailing, was it?
No, it wasn't.
What other challenges did he face?
Well, his own vice president, Aaron Burr,
Okay.
turned out to be kind of a wild card.
A wild card. How so?
Well, he was involved in various schemes and plots, including an alleged plan to create a separate country
Out of
parts of the western U.S. and Mexico.
Wow.
He even killed Alexander Hamilton in a duel in 1804.
Hold on. He killed Hamilton.
He did.
As in Alexander Hamilton, the founding father.
That's the one.
That's insane.
It was a shocking event that highlighted the intense political rivalries of the time.
So what happened to Burr?
Well, he was eventually tried for treason, but was acquitted due to a lack of evidence and a narrow interpretation of treason by, you guessed it,
John Marshall.
Always in the thick of things.
It seems like he was everywhere during this era.
He was a major player.
Our sources also mentioned some international tensions brewing during Jefferson's presidency.
Right.
What was going on there?
Remember those Napoleonic Wars raging in Europe?
Oh, right. Yeah.
They were having a major impact on American shipping and trade.
Okay.
Both Britain and France were interfering with American ships.
How so?
Seizing cargo and even impressing American sailors.
Impressive.
Basically kidnapping them and forcing them to serve in their navies.
It's awful.
Yeah, it was a blatant violation of American neutrality and sovereignty.
So how did Jefferson, who was generally opposed to foreign entanglements, respond to this?
He tried to find a peaceful solution.
Okay.
First through diplomacy.
Okay.
And then through economic pressure.
Okay.
He convinced Congress to pass the Embargo Act of 1807.
Now, what did that do?
It prohibited American ships from trading with any foreign ports.
So basically an economic boycott.
Exactly.
Did it work?
Not really.
Yeah.
The embargo kind of backfired. It hurt the American economy more than the European powers.
So it didn't really work.
No. It led to widespread unemployment and economic hardship.
Especially in
New England, which relied heavily on trade.
Right.
It even sparked talk of secession.
Wow.
From some disgruntled Federalists.
So this attempt to avoid conflict actually increased tensions.
It did.
Both domestically and internationally.
Yeah.
It seems like Jefferson's second term was marked by quite a few challenges.
It was a difficult period.
Yeah.
But it also highlights the complexities of leadership. Jefferson, despite his best intentions, faced situations where there were no easy answers.
Yeah.
And his decisions sometimes had unintended consequences.
That's true of most presidents, I guess.
Ooh, probably.
But even amidst these challenges, he remained committed to his vision of a nation grounded in liberty, self-government, and westward expansion.
He did.
Well, that was quite a deep dive into Jeffersonian America.
It was.
It's been a long journey.
We covered a lot.
We explored the birth of political parties.
Yeah.
The dramatic election of 1800. The Louisiana Purchase.
Yeah.
The Lewis and Clark expedition. The rise of judicial review.
Yeah.
And the challenges of navigating international relations in a world at war.
It was a busy time.
It's amazing to think how the debates and decisions of this era still resonate today.
Yeah, they really do.
Shaping our political landscape, our legal system, and even our national identity.
It's a reminder that history isn't just about dates and names. It's about the enduring ideas.
The what?
The enduring ideas, the clashing visions, and the choices that shaped the course of events.
And as you continue to explore this period or any other historical era, what should we be asking ourselves?
Ask yourself how the lessons of the past inform our understanding of the present.
Okay.
And how can they guide us towards a better future?
That's a great point to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive.
I think so.
It's been an enlightening conversation, and I hope it inspires you to keep exploring.
Yeah.
Keep questioning. And keep connecting the dots between the past, the present, and the future.
That's what it's all about.
Thanks for joining us.